Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man. He'll unpack wisdom and insights from a cross-section of top-quality performers in business, media, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle to uncover key elements to help you live your best audacious life ever. So without further ado, here is the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations, I'm Audley Stevenson, and thank you for tuning into the most audacious podcast you'll ever find on the internet. Take my word for it, hands down, this is it, the Audacious Living Podcast, and I appreciate you taking some time out of your day and joining us as we continue our ongoing goal of helping you live your best audacious life ever. As always, I would encourage you to connect with us through our social media channels. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram under the handle The Audacious Pod. And then, of course, we're on Facebook. Simply type in The Audacious Living Podcast, and you can be a part of that community as well. And then finally, if you are watching on YouTube, then you know that all you got to do to subscribe to our channel is tap that notification bell down below, and you are all set. Again, please like, follow, subscribe, share, and tell a friend that there's nothing but good old audacious stuff it's going on here on the podcast. Now, I'm joined by JJ French of the iconic rock group Twisted Sister, and so pleased to have him be a part of the episode. Songs like We're Not Gonna Take It and I Wanna Rock certainly are a couple of their big hits. And JJ was a founding member of the group. He was one of the lead guitarists, and he eventually became the business manager for the group. And that's where he learned some really important life lessons that he shares with audiences now as a motivational speaker. He actually created a business theory that he has dubbed the Twisted Method. Twisted standing for tenacity, wisdom, inspiration, stability, trust, excellence, and discipline. These really important lessons have served JJ so well, and he further explains them in his new book, Twisted Business, and that's where he details sort of the behind the scenes of a rock and roll band, as well as his own personal story. And that's why he dubs this book his bizwar, because it's a mix of business and his personal memoirs. If you're a Twisted Sister fan, or even mildly familiar with the music, you're going to be so intrigued by this interview. JJ is a gifted storyteller, and he really has a way to keep you hanging and tell some great stories too. And then even if you're not familiar with the group, I think the insights are really memorable, and there's lots of good stuff to learn from. Speaking of good stuff, I think I've done a pretty good job, a decent job setting the table up for JJ in our interview. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with JJ French of Twisted Sister. Enjoy.
So you're in Toronto?
I am.
Okay.
Born and raised.
Wow. So in other words, the cold weather hasn't scared the hell out of you? or it hasn't been that bad this last couple of years?
You just kind of get acclimatized to it, and you go, when September rolls around, it's going to get a bit chilly. When December hits, you're toast. Literally the other way, not literally toast. But
No, I got it. Listen, my friends who live in Minneapolis, I don't even understand. I really don't. I was out there we toured once, and we were I don't know. My bass player and I were out there for some reason. It was in January, and we were on a bus, and there were guys wearing flip-flops and shorts. Yeah. No kidding. And I said, "This is another species of nut, man."
It gets in your DNA and your genes. It's what you know.
What you know.
That's it. So listen, JJ, I really appreciate you doing this. This is really awesome.
Thank you.
Looking forward to this for a little while, actually. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I had a chance to read your book. Absolutely. I thought it was a great job. Shout out to you and Steve Farber, who your co-author, and he's done a tremendous job in helping you along, which is great. I just thought I don't get into big long introductions here, JJ. I just want to just get into this and talk about Twisted Business Lessons from My Life in Rock and Roll. And upon reflection, did you ever see yourself writing a book of this magnitude, this bizarre, if you will, about your life in business and rock and roll?
It's a really the book is a broad swath.
Yeah.
Covers a lot of time. And that time that it covers is a time that a lot of people are interested in, because it covers the 60s and the turbulence of the 60s.
Yeah.
And all that brings with it. And especially if you're like me, who grew up in New York City,
yep.
And was confronted with the massive cornucopia of options of everything, political, drugs, rock and roll, all that. It's all got poured into the book. And I am an archivist. I kept things. And I think I kept things because I always thought it was important to keep them, not necessarily because I needed to express to the world my ability to keep these things, but because I thought it was important enough that in history would show it was important enough. And I would show my kids, look at my Fillmore East programs and news clips and all this other stuff. So while it was all happening in real time, there was a thing in the back of my mind that said, this is a special time.
Got you.
This is a really special time, and that people are going to want to know about this time, whether through me or somebody else. And you know what? I was right.
Much can be said about appreciating the moment, because that's exactly what you're doing, right? You're not taking these moments for granted, whether they're interactions with individuals or maybe special performances or breaks that you got over the course of your career. They're all moments that you take, that you appreciate what's happening in that time.
Yeah, well, while they were happening, and you're reacting to whatever it is that was happening, you're not realizing at that moment maybe that they're going to catalog themselves into events that become important as a narrative.
Yeah.
But then when you reflect on it a little later, it becomes more apparent that, oh my God, for example, my bunkmate in one of my camps was Ben Chaney, the brother of James Chaney, one of the civil rights workers who was killed. Okay. Now, that's because I was going to a progressive camp where kids from New York City would go, and Ben Chaney was there. And so we didn't look at, that wasn't a thing of look at this strange guy and what happened to him. This was like, oh yeah, we marched on Washington, against the war 2 weeks ago, or we were down in Washington for civil rights marches or whatever. So when I say to people, yeah, well, the brother of one of the slain civil rights workers was, in my camp, they go, oh man, that's amazing. I said, well, no, he was just a kid my age in camp whose brother was one of those guys. And we talked about it as a real-time experience. So yes, I understand the historical context. At the time, it wasn't historical. At the time, it was just a kid. When I was thrown out of school for violating we were handing out an underground newspaper, I saw H. Rap Brown and Stokely Carmichael give a speech at Columbia University. I got, it just inflamed me. And I went down to my school and we started a demonstration that led to a riot, which led to me getting thrown out. I don't think I thought at the time, this is going to be a good story to tell 50 years from now.
Right.
It was just a reaction to the time. I don't think when I was watching Jimi Hendrix from the 10th row center at the Fillmore East, and I remember standing up and watching him saying to myself, really saying to myself at that moment, because I had seen Jimmy a year before and he was bad. He was at the Garden and he was freaked out and on acid. Turns out, I found out from his producer, he didn't have a good night. He walked off stage, and I thought, well, that can't be the only time I'm going to see the greatest guitar player in the world not be great.
Right.
So I see him again. I go to the Fillmore to see the famous New Year's Eve shows with Band of Gypsies. And I'm sitting there and I'm standing there, 10th row center. I remember looking at him. Mm-hmm. He was only like 40 feet away from me. I'm thinking, don't forget this, because someone's going to ask you about this, 50 years from now. They're going to go, did you see Jimi Hendrix? Yeah. And what was it like? And I will tell you what it was like.
Right.
So every one of the experiences that I go through in the book that happened to me, they didn't just happen to me. It happened to other people.
Sure.
Whether they wrote about it, cared to write about it, still alive to tell people, I don't know. Right. But I figured at this point in my life, with all of this crazy stuff that went on, it was time to put it down on paper.
Got you.
And so that was really the impetus or the motivation behind getting it all out.
And what's really important in this, JJ, is the fact that it's your perspective. So rightfully so, you weren't the only one watching Jimmy, but you had your perspective. And I think it's really important that we identify there is importance in your story, my story, and another person's story, because they all matter. So it's good that you did that.
Yeah, well, people say to me, like, what are the best rock shows you've ever seen? And I can go down a list because I saw just about everybody you can imagine. And some were phenomenal and some weren't so good, but I saw them all. I saw them all. It's crazy how many shows, forgetting even the Twisted Sister part of this, which we're not even talking about it yet. But the other day I was going through my record collection and I realized that at least a half a dozen live albums that I have in my collection were shows that I was at. Wow. Which means that those shows were important enough to make into live albums. Right? That's what that means.
Right.
It just means that I happened to be at the right place at the right time where performances were considered so good that the artist was going to release them as a live record. So I've been to 3 Grateful Dead concerts, which are all on record. I was at those 3. I was at many, many of those. Sure. John Mayall at the Fillmore when he did his acoustic set. I was there that day. I just was there that night, right? Yeah, and I remember that night being special, and it was made into a live album.
That's right.
When the Rolling Stones played the Garden in 1969 during the Thanksgiving Day shows right before the Altamont disaster, I was at all 3 of those shows. That was made into a live album. Right. When Elvis Presley played the Garden in 1972, I was at the Garden in 1972. When the band played the Academy of Music and for this album that was titled Rock of Ages, I happened to be at that show. So after a while, you start to think, I was where you needed to be at the time you needed to be there.
Clearly.
And clearly I was.
Yeah.
And there's proof of it. So that was a story. When the Son of Sam was shooting people all over New York, we were playing in the bars and we were responding to the fact that girls didn't want to go to clubs because he was shooting women in parking lots.
Right.
All during a whole year of our existence. People say to me, do you know the Son of Sam? Well, hell yeah. He affected my ability to make money. He was shooting people and nobody was going out, or nobody.
Right.
Girls were afraid.
Exactly.
When you tie in sociologically important times to your life, everybody can relate to those times. Well, they can either relate to them because they've been through them, lived through them, or they know about them. They want to read about them. And I was at the right place at the right time for many of those events, and I'm grateful.
And another point, and we'll get into the twisted story here in a second, but I'm really enjoying this piece because there's a really, the other, I think, significant part of what we're talking about here is oftentimes outside people are the ones that tell us how significant those moments that we were part of, that we were there, and not that it wasn't important, so you absolutely sure you were enjoying the moment, but not in terms of understanding the historical perspective. It's the outside components that go, hey, that was a special night, or that was a special moment.
Yeah. In fact, there's an author named Jonathan Taplin who has a book called The Magic Years. And I'm 69 years old. He's 73. He's a professor now, an adjunct professor in California. Wrote an astonishing book. And because he's 5 years older than me, he was not only at most of these events that I was at, but he was working at those events that I was at. And I said to him, after reading his book and interviewing him, like, for example, the band's concert, the Rock of Ages, he produced that show. The Last Waltz, that's one of the most famous rock documentaries in the world. He hired Scorsese to direct that show. So I said to him, Jonathan, it's interesting to talk to you because I may have been witnessing these great events, but you were producing some of these great events because you were ahead of the curve by me. And that, of course, pisses off kids who are younger than me who go, you're so lucky, man, that you got to see. So how many times, I don't know how old you are, but I will tell you that I cannot tell you how many times I'm at a dinner party and people say, what are the best things you ever saw? I said, well, I don't know. I saw the Dead 20s. I saw Zeppelin as an opening band. I saw the Woody Herman Orchestra open for Led Zeppelin. And they're like talking to me like my dad, like when I was a boy, gasoline was 29 cents a gallon. We had to walk 5 miles to school in the dark. And I said, I'm sorry that you hate me.
That's my life.
That's my life. I'm sorry they hate me because I saw everything that you wish you could see. Someone said to me, well, I saw The Who in 1989. I said, well, to tell you the truth, I saw The Who open for Wilson Pickett, which is true. Okay? I saw that. Wilson Pickett headlined the show, Murray the K Easter Show, 1967. Wilson Pickett, Mitch Ryder, Young Rascals, Cream and the Who were on the bill, way at the bottom of the bill. And it said The Cream. Didn't even say Cream. That's how early it was. The Cream. And I had heard of The Cream, and I was 14, and the Who, but I went to see Wilson Pickett, Mitch Ryder, and the Young Rascals because I knew who they were. Tickets were $3. I mean, what the hell, you know? It was in those days, the rock shows were, the soul reviews that used to exist, the Motown soul reviews, where they had the whole roster of Motown artists. Everybody did 2 songs, or do your 3 singles. Get out of here. 4 tops, 3 singles, Supremes, 3 singles, Smokey, in and out. That's how the rock reviews were. This was a rock review before bands started to do dedicated concerts. Right. So he had, Murray the K had Simon and Garfunkel, the Blues Magoos. He had like 10 bands. You couldn't even keep track. Sure. And the Who, so I'm 14 years old and Cream come out. I remember what they did. They did 2 songs, NSU and I Feel Free, and the Who did My Generation and I Can't Explain. Anyway, you tell this to people. Yep. You what? What year was that? You what? And then you go, I'm sorry.
It's just my life.
It's just my life. I'm sorry, man.
I'm sorry for living my life. That's awesome.
Okay. Yeah. And I was stoned at the time. And I was dealing, I was dealing weed at the age of 15, and I'm saying to people, I was ahead of my time. Everybody's dealing weed now. That's right. I could have told you 50 years ago it's going to be legalized. You wouldn't listen to me.
I think that's a real good transition, JJ, because you talk about sort of, your dealing days and how drugs influenced in your early days, but it served a real purpose. Like, you were dealing because you wanted to get, a guitar as an example. So it served a real specific purpose for you.
I wanted to buy guitars, amplifiers, and go to rock shows. And my parents didn't have the money to support it. And so I found a way to do it and be high at the same time.
Right.
The challenge was the money started coming in so big and so fast that there's a part of you that says, oh, maybe I'm just going to be a big drug dealer. Like I'm going to turn into a Pablo Escobar. Like maybe that's my goal. And you had to, and in order for that to not happen, I had to constantly say, earn this much money, spend it on guitars and amps. Earn this much money, travel to see rock shows. In other words, if the dream was to, quote, make it, then don't lose focus of what the dream is. Now, I know that sounds so outlandish coming from a 16-year-old kid who's doing a lot of drugs, but that's exactly how it was. That's why I never got busted because I always kind of kept it small. I could have easily gone way bigger, but I didn't want to risk it because all I wanted was guitars, amplifiers, and go to shows. And then secondly, as much of the drugs that I consumed, which was monumentally large, I always knew at some point I would have to get out of it. And I got out of it, luckily, at the point where, as I detail in the book, a lot of my friends, as the whole scene crumbled, the hippie scene was love and flowers and peace and marijuana and LSD in the beginning. And it sadly morphed into heroin big time in my scene. And so living in New York City, of course, and as the scene turned, my best friend, my girlfriend, who by the way was the great granddaughter of Robert E. Lee, and I have to tell you, the only reason why she dated me because I was a white Jew drug dealer from New York. She knew that would scare the hell out of her mother. And
everything has a purpose.
And everything has a purpose. You know damn well that scared the hell out of her. I don't know what was worse, Jew, New Yorker, or drug dealer, hippie, but I get the whole package.
That's right. That's awesome.
So as the whole scene crumbled, and then I OD'd on heroin one afternoon. I came so close to dying, and I kind of, the inner survivalist in me woke up and went, time out. You have. Can I curse on it? Can I just said you have with life enough. You've had a hell of a run. Remember, I'm 20 at this point. Or 19. I was 19. I was about to turn 20. You've had a hell of a run. When are you going to realize that it's time to move on? And And I did. And I'm one of the lucky ones, because the
Yeah.
people who are still alive who knew me back then would never have guessed that it would have stopped, or that I wouldn't have been killed, wrong place, wrong time in a drug deal,
Yep.
or just found dead for whatever reason. And so to do that, I changed my life completely from a hippie drug dealer. And as I say in the book, I don't know, my mother was more freaked out about, hey, Mom, here's the good news. I'm no longer doing drugs. However, I am now in the transvestite rock band. Well, there's a career choice. That's a crazy career choice. And also, that was in the days when it was David Bowie and glam, and it was transvestite rock band. Like,
Yep.
You wear women's clothing.
Yep.
Like the dolls, that's what you did. Yep. I mean, that's not what everybody did, but
no, but it was an option. It was an
option.
Absolutely.
And it was an option that was viable.
Right.
Absolutely. Commercially viable option where you could get work as a band like that, because enough people were liking David Bowie and Lou Reed and Martha Hoople and T-Rex, and Slade and all that stuff, that the club circuit, which was run essentially, but essentially these are like Italian guys who've been around since the 40s who, given their choice, just want Tony Bennett in their clubs, okay? And they've had to grudgingly change. And then, it was bad enough, the hippie scene, like, oh, I got to have a band like the Grateful Dead, the Allman Brothers. It was bad enough. And then you come in with transvestites. Oh, what is going on here? And they grudgingly had to make the adjustment.
Yes.
Because there was a lot of kids who wanted to see that stuff. So people say to me, was there blowback? No, because that was just another, if you want to see that kind of band, they're playing in that bar.
Right. That's right.
Tonight. That's all.
Appealing to the masses, right?
You're playing the masses. So if you want to see a band that plays Doors music, go there. Rolling Stones. If you want to see like David Bowie type band, they're over there.
Yep.
That.
So JJ, let's talk about the sort of formation of Twisted Sister. Certainly, one of the things that is a theme throughout your book, and you talk a lot about, is the reinvention and having to evolve and change and change. And when you sort of document the number of changes that the group itself had gone through, I mean that was a learning for me. I didn't realize it was been that many. And I think one of the themes that was clear is that you're very true to your principles of no drugs and staying clean, which is interesting considering your personal starting point, right?
Well, look, let's really start at the beginning. I was called through a friend of a friend, gave my phone number to a guy who called me up and said, I got your phone number. I got a glitter band. The guy sounded like Sylvester Stallone. I got a glitter band. Its name is Silver Star. We're looking for a guitar player. A use in the glitter. A use in, not are you into glitter. A use in the glitter. Like somehow the Sopranos, Use in the glitter. I went, yeah. He goes, okay. So I got a band. We live in Jersey. I live in Manhattan. Well, I'll come and pick you. I'll pick you up. So he comes on. He rings the bell, and I open the door, and there's an African American guy named Mel, and he goes, how you doing? I'm Mel. I'm from Newark. I went, okay, fine, great, beautiful looking guy, like incredible, because I'm telling you, when he was wearing the wig, I mean, like Tina, he was gorgeous, but whatever. So, but he's talking like, like Rocky Balboa a little bit, so we're gonna, we rehearse, we love Martha Hoople, and then he says to me, are you a reggae fan? I go, yeah. He goes, you like Bob Marley? And this whole conversation is surreal to begin with.
Sure.
When he goes, my brother's Bob Marley's guitar player. I go, well, Bob Marley just replaced his guitar. Bunny Anderson was out with Bunny Wailer with Al Anderson. He goes, yeah, that's my brother Al. So the big trivia question is, what does Bob Marley and Twisted Sister have in common? In 1973, two members of both bands were brothers. Talk about how incongruous is that?
Nobody would ever pick that one up.
Ever. That is and by the way, Al came down to one of the early shows and came up on stage and jammed with us. And I said to Al, I said, how did you get a gig? You're not Jamaican. The guy's from Newark, New Jersey. He goes, I put on a fake Jamaican accent and got the gig. And I thought, only a hustler, you know what I mean? Only a hustling New York guy. I don't care what color it comes in.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a great guitar player.
Sure.
But, he said I kind of put on a fake accent. He goes, I couldn't keep it up much longer. Like they hired me because I was a great player. And after a while, they found out I was from Newark, New Jersey. But, it's like, oh my God, that was the funniest thing in the world. So anyway, so I joined this band, and I soon realized that we're playing in bars because that's what you did. And there was millions of bars, and the drinking age was like basically 18. And so you got work right away.
Yep.
but that they drank a lot. And one thing I'll say about my drug years was I didn't drink. Alcohol was never a part of the hippie scene in New York in those days.
Right.
Maybe someone drank a beer. Boone's Farm wine, I think, was around cheap, but nobody drank. So I didn't know anything about alcohol. So we get a gig in the Hamptons out in Long Island. Our first really big gig. We got a gig that lasted 3 months in one club. And that's crazy. And we lived upstairs.
Yep.
You know, and it's a bar and it's in the Hamptons and we're 20 years old and there's girls everywhere, you know. And I remember saying to Mel, I said, man, we're going to get laid. He goes, man, you're going to get laid because girls like guys that look like girls. Trust me, you know. So me and my singer used to be chained together with dog collars on, you know, and that worked until we got an electric shock one day. We both hit the microphone and then that idea went to hell really quick. But
for
these guys,
for real,
oh,
electric shock?
For real. Oh, no. I thought I lost the ability to have children. I got a shock that was so bad. Yeah, it's funny because I never really told the story. So we're singing a Bowie song or whatever. We've got the dog collars on. We both hit the microphone, touch it with our lips, and we weren't grounded. And all of a sudden, this bolt of lightning comes. Ah! Oh my God! You know, and that was the end of that routine. That died a quick death before I died a quick death.
And I'm sure someone's writing a book about what they saw when they saw Twisted Sister perform and they almost got killed on stage, right?
And that's if any of those kids are around, because that's right. Almost 50 years ago, and the way those kids drank. So anyway, the band drank, and I didn't really understand alcohol.
Right.
I know it sounds incredibly weird and naive, because to this day, I have only had 6 beers in my entire life. And I remember each time I drank it. Beer has never worked with me. And I'm not allergic to food, but for some reason, every time I drank a beer, I got stomachache. So I've only had 6 beers. I know exactly when I've had them.
Yep.
So anyway, the singer says to me, one afternoon, we're just hanging out in the bar with the bartenders, and he goes, you should learn about drinking. So he says, Mickey, come over here, set up some shot glasses. Show JJ what you got. You know, pour him some Jack, some Chivas, and Wild Turkey, whatever.
Yep.
And they put out like 6 or 7 shot glasses. And so I take them and I go, ugh, tastes like cough medicine. And the next one, ugh, it tastes like worse cough medicine. And the next one, ugh, how do you guys drink? Why do you drink this crap? This is like paint thinner. So I never liked alcohol. So they're drinking.
Yep.
I'm not. They're drinking a lot.
Yep.
I'm not.
Yep.
They're playing in bars where everyone's drinking a lot. So as their quality of playing would deteriorate, the truth is the fans' ability to discern deteriorated. So you couldn't really tell if the deterioration of the band was hurting us because everybody was drunk. Right. You know, it was as ubiquitous drinking as it was in my scene doing acid, seeing the Grateful Dead. You know, you go see the Grateful Dead in the 60s, everyone's on acid, everyone's smoking dope. That's right. That scene.
Right.
This is now an alcohol scene.
Yes.
And it was funny in the beginning, funny, right? Because the danger of it wasn't affecting anything. It was just funny and stupid.
Yep.
But then, as I detail in the book, the singer got in a fight with the drummer, and he pulled a loaded gun out.
Right. In
a bar fight, he was drunk. And not to stereotype people, but an Irish alcoholic with a loaded gun may not be the best combination of things to happen. Gotcha. Now, Michael, the singer, and Mel, the drummer who hired me, they were high school friends. They kind of knew each other.
Okay. Yeah.
Which made it even stranger because I was the newcomer. I didn't know any of these guys. They all had a history.
Sure.
So it was particularly disturbing to see them. But I walked in to the scene when Michael was holding the gun at Mel. Wow. And I was 22 years old. The band had been together 2 years. And at that moment, I thought my life is over. I thought I was either going to witness a murder, be a victim of an errant bullet, or have to testify.
Right.
And the whole point is the rock and roll thing was over.
Right.
And that happened in a flash, because, you know, these things happen in a flash. Yes. And so, you know, it happened like, I can kill you, you know. And he used the N-word to Mel. And these guys knew each other.
Right.
I think Mel turned around, basically said, "You drunk, Mick, you know, go ahead and pull it." Like, you know, obviously they had a history where you could get away with certain racial epithets.
Yep.
You understand what I'm talking about here? That
Absolutely.
I could never even fathom, but somehow that's how they communicated.
Right.
And I'm standing back going, you know, and then he threw the gun down. Gun didn't go off. They got in a fist fight. Band broke up.
Right.
And that was the first trauma that affected the band and affected me. And I go into in detail in the book about how that led to depression, deep depression for me, because it coincided with my mother's death and my girlfriend leaving me all in the same week. Not a good week.
Right.
And then I started keeping diaries. Why? I don't know. I didn't go to a therapist. I should have. I contemplated suicide. I was so deeply depressed over the girl leaving me and my mother dying.
Yes.
I entered that black hole of depression, and only people who've ever been there will know what I'm talking about. But I will tell you that if somebody tells you they're in a black hole of depression, don't ever take that lightly.
Yeah.
That's a scary place to be. It is truly a scary place. And I didn't seek professional help in hindsight, dumb, because the pain that I engendered lasted longer than it probably should have had I gone to a therapist and gotten some sort of medication. But I didn't. So I toughed it through. And about 8 months after the event, I woke up one day and the pain was gone. And I couldn't believe I wasn't in pain. And I didn't understand it. I said, this is a mistake. I'm going to wake up tomorrow and be in pain. And I woke up, I wasn't in pain.
Right.
So I thought to myself, well, maybe depression like that is like a cut on the wrist and eventually heals with time. And it kind of does.
Yeah.
However, it taught me a lesson. Anytime in the future, if I felt like I was going like that, I went to a therapist right away and I got some medication right away. Who wants to be that?
Right.
Who wants to be in a black hole like that?
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough journey to get out of that hole, to climb out of that hole. I mean, you're not even thinking there's a way out of the hole, quite frankly, because it's that dark and deep.
100%. Like, it is so dark and deep. You don't believe there is a way out.
Right. Yeah.
You know, you don't believe there's a way out. And I can't emphasize enough that was so awesomely affecting my life. And the diary, here's the thing with the diary, and I talk about this in the book. I detailed my mental state. And then I kept the diary going for 15 years. And the beauty of that diary, among the many tools I discuss in the book for surviving in business, is that I was always able to, when we had tough patches in the future, I was able to go back and read and go, oh, I got out of that.
Right.
You know?
Right.
I figured out a way out.
Yeah.
And so I'll figure out a way, because, you know, a lot of times you just face hopeless situations in life and you wonder, am I ever going to get out of it?
Right. Right.
And people look at rock musicians or movie stars, they think our lives are like ideal, and our lives are just as crappy as anybody else's. You know, we have something else going on that can bring adulation, which is fake for the most part anyway. And people, the average person go, isn't that great? They tell you they love you. Thousands of people tell you they love you. And the problem a lot, of course, is that you buy into it.
Yes.
You know, and people don't understand. You'll understand this line. I always say that fame is rented. It's never owned.
There you go.
You know,
Absolutely.
It's never owned. But young kids think it's forever. And it's so stupid.
It's absolutely.
It's like, if you are lucky enough to attain it, you have a little window. And maybe if you're lucky, maybe you're a Michael Jackson, or you're a Prince, or you're a Madonna, or you're the Beatles. How many of those in the billions of people that have had fame exist? This tiny little crew. And, you know, and I have to say, I learned over the years, I don't care if you have a 40-year history, a career in the entertainment business, you survive. I don't care what music you play. Hats off to you. Absolutely. I know how messed up this business is.
Well, so especially all the change the industry goes through. Like, the industry that we have today isn't what you started in. It's gone through all kinds of reinventions, if you will. Which
is why it led to ultimately me doing motivational speaking and writing the book and talking about the twisted method of reinvention, because I started telling my stories to guys like, you know, to people like you, and just, they go, well, how did you do it? And I go, well, this happened. The more I told the story, the more the narrative peeled out. Yeah. The more I realized that if I wrote a book, the book wasn't just going to be one of these rock and roll memoirs. Right. That's so typical. Right. It had to be something that meant something. Yep. And that imparted some wisdom, because otherwise there was no point in doing it. And that's why a lot of people don't expect this book to be what it turned out to? Were you surprised at what it turned out to be?
The lessons for me, and let's talk about the twisted method, because that's something that I always, there's a lesson in everything, right? In every experience that we go through, every circumstance we run into, when we get to the other side, when we get that opportunity to kind of, calm ourselves down, if you will, and look back, we can go, oh wow, okay, that was the lesson, or that was the learnings. And the manner in which you're able to develop a whole method, the twisted method around, many of these lessons that you learned, I thought it was phenomenal. That was a part that really hooked me. And so maybe let's kind of start and just kind of briefly run through that, starting with tenacity being the T of twisted.
Yeah. So if you take the letters TWISTED, people always, in this day and age where everyone has the attention span of a gnat, except when it comes to Netflix, which we're willing to watch 95 hours of television nonstop.
16 seasons of your favorite show.
It's really weird. We either just want one word, or we want war and peace. We don't want anything in between. It's like, oh, just give me a quick answer, or can I sit around for 4 weeks with my wife or my partner, just binge watching? That's a whole other thing. So everyone likes to distill everything into one word, because it's so easy. Like, the TV show Veep, or Heat, like it's one word. So there's a book out there that has one word to describe what they think is successful. And I read the book and I thought, okay, that word is one element of why I became successful. It wasn't it was an. Yep. And I can't distill it to a word but I will say that tenacity is an overarching and overriding word to begin this thing, because without the tenacity without the ability to be tenacious, that you will never go any further. Okay, you will never go any further, because the road is so long. And by the way, even if the road isn't long, and you're lucky enough to win the lottery, like when you're on American Idol.
Sure.
This is what kills me about American Idol. Kid wins American Idol, right? Yep. 22-year-old kid. I want to thank my friends and my fans for sticking with me for 15 weeks. And I almost fall off my chair. Like 15 weeks. Oh my God. I'd like to thank my Instagram fans and my fans staying with me for 15 weeks. And I'm looking at this poor kid going, man,
you don't know nothing yet.
You don't know nothing. And and you shouldn't have had this because you just don't know and of course, all the stories about what happened to all those people follows exactly what I knew was going to happen to them. But anyway, but if they're tenacious,
right, keep going.
If they're tenacious, they will figure out a way to have a career. Yeah, because that ain't a way to have a career. Okay,
you got it.
And I'm not jealous about it, but trust me, there are bands and people who somehow are in the right place, right time, and get a shot. However, a one-hit wonder, a one-shot wonder is one thing. When you have 30, 40 years of successes, that's when you have a career.
Absolutely.
That's the truth.
Right.
Michael Jackson may have had, ABC here. He's got legacies. And Madonna's got legacies, and the Beatles had legacies, and Elvis had legacies. And they had hit after hit after hit after hit and you learn all those lessons along the way. And that's what happens a lot. So anyway, T for tenacity. So sure, I give you my pearls of wisdom on tenacity.
There you go.
And my pearls of wisdom come down to, we were turned down more times than a bed sheet and have come back more times than Freddy Krueger, and Michael Myers.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's true. Yeah. I mean, we got knocked down so many times that people said to me, how did you sustain that? There's reasons why we sustained it, but someone said, man, you're so smart. And I said, I don't know if I was smart or stupid. I didn't know if I was too stupid to not recognize
it's time to quit, or
time to quit.
Yeah.
Don't you think it's really time to quit? We got. So I described the cynicism in the band in the book about this one record executive, who was going to fly over from England to see us, and we were like, so at this point, we were playing this gig upstate New York, and the guy was supposed to fly in, and we said, chances are the plane will blow up over the Atlantic. Some terrorists will blow up the plane, but even if the plane lands, I'm sure he'll get in a car crash on the way up to the venue. But if he doesn't, I'm sure the PA will fall on us in the middle of the set. And of course he gets there and we put on a great show, and he comes to the dressing room and he goes, oh, this is amazing. I'm signing you. And we don't react. We really aren't reacting. We're going,
right.
Okay, yeah. And he walks out and he says, to one of my crew, because I just told this man, I'm signing him. He goes, well, you don't understand what they've been through. And he walked out the door and I go, $5 says he doesn't make it back to the airport. $20 says the plane gets blown up over the Atlantic. You know, this is what happens.
Yes. Yeah, it does. It does.
You know, so this is okay. So that's tenacity. Wisdom.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing because you have to be smart to survive. You have to, know when to hold them, know when to fold them. You have to know how to deal with people.
Yes.
We had an innate wisdom. I had an innate wisdom, which I realized in a conversation I had with my father on the night that my mother died, and we had the funeral for her. Mm-hmm. And I was 22, and I was sitting in the living room with my dad. And I looked at him and I said, you and me, we don't really have a relationship. It was me and mom. And
right.
And I'm thinking to myself, my father's not the kind of guy that's going into therapy. That's just not that generation's shtick.
Right.
And so I said, either I figure out a way to come to terms with my father and we agree on it, or we have no relationship. I didn't want to lose him. Right. And I said, look, if you forgive me for being the low-life high school dropout, drug dealing, blah, 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 and I forgive you for whipping me, because he just take his belt down and whip me, because a lot in that generation of fathers did. In fact, everybody in my band's fathers did that. It wasn't just my father. Yeah. That's how they reacted to stuff. They weren't exactly emotionally stable people. I don't know if your father ever gave.
It was, I understand it's a reaction. I oftentimes, those fathers that did that, parents that did that, was more about their loss of control than what they're actually reacting to.
100%, their loss of control. So I looked at him and said, I'll forgive you for this. You forgive me for that. We'll shake hands. We'll never talk about it again. We'll just move forward.
Yeah.
And he shook hands with me. And we had a great 10 years. I mean, it wasn't the best.
Sure.
But we spoke almost every day. Amazing. Talked about baseball, his trips on the road. I had a relationship with my dad.
Right.
And I wouldn't have had that. And he wasn't going to be the one to suggest that to me. You get that?
Yeah.
It didn't come from him. So that kind of gave me a little feeling that I had some wisdom in the back of my head. And I was able to use that wisdom in many areas of the band's evolution, which again is spelled out in the book. Yep. The eye for inspiration. Well, here's the deal with inspiration. Inspiration is the fuel that you live on until you start making money on your dreams.
That's it.
It's as simple as that.
That's it.
You're inspired.
Yeah.
You're inspired. You're willing to risk everything. You know as well as I do, that only works to a point.
That's right.
And if you can't convert that dream into money, you're more than likely going to change your dream.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's a misstatement.
Nope.
At all.
Yep.
So, my inspiration was the Beatles, the Stones, all that stuff was my inspiration. My dreams were built on my inspirations. Yes. And I was able to convert it ultimately into money. But, it is a fuel.
Yes.
But listen, I don't know about in your business, but in my business back in the day, you kind of gave yourself to be 30, and then you went, if things aren't happening at 30. Right.
Yeah, give you deadlines. You give yourself deadlines, right? Yeah.
And how often your parents go, how many years are you going to be doing this before you get a real job? How many people hear that from their parents all the time?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
When are you getting a real job? So my parents gave up on preaching to me in the 60s, as most parents did in the 60s, because they kind of threw the white flag, your whole generation is
That's right.
And they all did.
Yes.
Just about all my friends' parents, just kind of like, if you walk down the street, you see white flags hanging out the thing. I give up. These kids, let's just hope they don't die. Okay, I give up.
That's right.
So, but in my head, I said, how long can I play in a rock band? Before I don't know how I'm going to live.
Right.
So I had a built-in time frame, and I had to make it. And I discussed the inspiration.
Yep. In
the book, and how long, and then the changeovers where the inspiration led to financial success and which led directly into stability. So there's a quote from Duke Ellington in the stability section.
Yeah. And
I found that quote late as I was working on the book, and I fell off my chair, and I went, damn. He goes, to keep a band together, you need a gimmick. My gimmick was to pay the band. I was like, yeah.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay, that's coming from Duke Ellington. He realized you want to keep a bunch of cats together, you got to pay them. You got to make sure they can make a living. Otherwise, they're going to go somewhere else. They'll go into construction, or they'll go to another band, right?
That's right.
I mean,
or someone will pay them.
Yeah, yeah. And guys don't pay them, or they pay them so little. Right. I go, I found a gimmick. The gimmick was pay the band. And I'm
Yeah.
reading this going, that's like the smartest thing I've ever seen, you know? So I put that quote in there because, as obvious as it sounds, it's the truth.
Yeah.
So I helped create a stable financial environment where we could make enough money doing what we were doing, playing the bars, and everybody could rely on a salary,
Yes.
so that our goals, near middle and far goals, could be reached systematically.
Gotcha.
And you also, you know, in the process of doing this, you need this vision to be able to figure out, because, you know, other people are relying on
Absolutely.
the ability to continue this machine.
Yep.
And that's why bands break up and marriages break up, because people don't do what they're supposed to do.
Yep.
But, you know, and there's different kinds of people in this world. Keith Richards has this quote that I love. Someone said to him, "What's the difference between you and Mick Jagger?" And he goes, "Well, Mick wakes up every morning and he thinks, what am I doing today? What am I doing next week? What am I doing in 10 weeks? What am I doing in 10 years? He goes, me, I wake up and go, I woke up this morning."
That's it.
So you have to appreciate, there's some people who just wake up and go, I woke up this morning.
Here, that's it. Yeah, yeah.
And they
Celebrate it.
Yeah, and they may be very talented, but they don't have that vision.
Right.
Doesn't mean they shouldn't be part of your company.
Sure.
It just means that they're not the ones that are going to be guiding the ship.
Gotcha. Yep.
That's all.
Yep.
That's all. So if they're talented enough to keep on, and in general, you can't have 5 captains on a boat. It's just insane.
That's
so
right.
you need one captain, and you need a crew that just believes
Yes.
in that.
Yes.
And in my band, we had 2 captains. You know, D was the creative captain, because he was the visionary. He saw the music and the image, and I was the financial captain and kept the boat
Gotcha.
moving, right? So that's why that works.
Yep.
So stability is important in any company.
Yes.
And that's why, by the way, all of these letters are applicable to everything,
Yeah.
to life in general. You
That's
know, it's
correct.
all applicable. They're applicable to every. I don't care if you're in a band or you're selling. You have a shoe company, or
Right.
you know, you're selling a better mousetrap. These are the secrets for companies to stay alive.
That's right.
Then I get to the E and the D, the excellence and the dedication and discipline, rather. And
Right.
you know, people do not necessarily.
Did we miss
strive-
trust? Did we miss trust?
Oh, I'm sorry, we did miss. We did. You're right. You
Yeah,
got the
yeah.
first T, right? The second T was trust.
That's right.
And trust is important because
Yeah.
your partners have to trust your vision.
Yes.
And that's thank you for saying that. And 100%. So not only is it a stability, but it's the trust in knowing that everyone who you work with is doing the job they're supposed to do. You trust them to do what they have to do.
Yeah.
And you don't expect them to do things that they don't really have to do.
Yeah.
So I don't have to worry about the production side because Mendoza's doing that. And I have to worry about the other guitar player
That's
because
right.
Eddie is just a great player and he can cover for my stuff. So yeah, we all, you know, sports people say what happens between the lines
Yes.
is the whole thing.
Yes.
And that, you know, when people talk about locker room talk, I don't care about locker room talk. If I can rely on my people,
Yep.
when I have to rely on my people between the lines,
Yes.
that's the most important thing. Football players talk about it. If you
Yes.
can't trust your linemen, or
Yes.
you can't trust your guards, or you
They do.
can't trust the wide receiver to do his job, the whole thing falls
Absolutely.
apart.
That's right.
So trusting your partners, trusting your people, if you don't have it, you got nothing either.
Yep.
Then you get to the excellence. And most people do not subscribe excellence and discipline to a rock and roll band. Let's be honest.
Yeah, they don't necessarily think that. I get it. I get it.
They don't. They think we made it because sex, drugs, rock and roll, fairy dust, and deal with the devil. Somehow we cut our finger. So the devil came down and said, I will make you a hit record and you're going to be owned by me. I mean, that's, you know, this is this myth that gets kind of it's such a bullshit myth. And it's, and over the years, as we were shedding members of the band who couldn't be trusted, who didn't have that discipline.
Gotcha.
As you know, in the book, I talk about the fact that, you know, trying to find a straight band in my world is next to impossible.
Well, yeah, that was surprising. I mean, it's because you'd think that there's all types of individuals that come in for different reasons, and not knowing that this pull or this vortex they get caught into, everyone is going to that hole almost.
Yeah. So what we say to people is, you're coming into our world.
Yeah.
These are the rules in our world.
Yeah.
And if you don't like them, find another world.
Right.
But if you're coming in here, we operate at this level, and it's a very high level.
Yeah.
And so we don't like drugs, we don't like alcohol. So what happens is you get guys auditioning for the band, and the ones who are truthful, the one I respect the most, are the ones who go, "Wow, you mean to tell me I can't get wasted?" And I go, "Well, you can do what you want to do on your own time, but if anything that you do gets in the way of us succeeding because you're getting over a hangover the night before, then no."
That's right.
That's really it. I mean, I'm not going to tell you can't have a beer here and there,
No.
but if the excesses of this business prevent you from being 100%, then you're not welcome into this company. And to the guys who said, "Fair enough, that's not me. Thank you for coming. I respect you." For those who said, "Oh, I'm totally straight," and lied to me,
Right.
got the gig, and then wound up getting up and embarrassing the band.
Right. They got fired.
You fire them.
Yeah.
People don't think that happens in rock and roll bands. It happens in our band.
Wow.
And we fired another band member for racist and anti-Semitic remarks, because at the end of the day, we have Jews in the band, we have Hispanics in the band. I mean,
Sure.
and there may be a window of familiarity that really old and close friends have, where they can say certain things, and
Sure.
what I'm talking about.
I do.
And it's a very tiny little window, and it's
Yes.
a very tiny little opportunity, and it's always behind closed doors,
Yes.
and it's between best friends who may kid around. But barring that,
Right.
there is no place for it.
Exactly.
Barring that, the intent behind the way it's said says everything you need to know about the person.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you interpret an attack by one band member against another in a vitriolic way that calls into play racism or anti-Semitism, then you go, "Not here."
Yeah. Things that people wouldn't attribute with a rock band, that be that principled and have those core values, that this is what we stand for and this is what we don't subscribe to. Again, that's not attributed to a rock band, JJ. Not at all. Not at all.
But it's not acceptable anywhere.
Right. You're
I
right.
mean, sir, well, let me put you this way. It may be not in a company I'd ever worked with.
Got you.
Okay, so let's say, yeah, I'm sure it exists, but not around an atmosphere. In my day, growing up in Manhattan in the 60s, where all my friends were Black, Spanish, Chinese, white, Jewish, all we cared about was what music did you listen to, fucked up did you want to get?
Yeah.
And that was the sole criteria for joining this club, right?
Right.
So we never, ever, ever, I know this could sound naive, nobody ever used racial epithets. Nobody ever did. It just wasn't part of who we were. And if my parents ever heard it, my father would literally pick you up and throw you out of the house, because that's the kind of house I came from.
Right.
But I also don't want to sound like born again Christian movement. Like, what I'm just saying is there was an inherent decency and a respect for all of our friends we all had for each other. And none of it was based on name calling, ever.
Right.
You were either an asshole or you were an asshole. You got that?
Much,
that's an equal opportunity.
That's pretty straightforward there. I got it.
That's an equal opportunity deal there. You're a fucking moron. Get at it. Like, not you're a moron because you're this. No, you're just a moron.
That's right. That's right.
You're just an asshole. I don't want to hang with you anymore.
And that applies to everybody.
Applies to everybody. It's equal opportunity offensiveness.
That's right.
So that's what I grew out of. So I never, when I was first confronted with it in the band and we're playing in the suburbs, I remember a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, when I said to him that I heard the N-word used in a discussion in a bar. Okay. Shortly after I joined the band. Now you have to remember, I've traveled the world, I've dealt drugs, all this crazy shit, but was never subjected to a certain level of ignorance. I remember saying to my friend, "Yeah, some guy used the N-word." And he goes, "Don't you know the United States of America?" I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You got New York, California, and South Africa in between." That's how he described it to me. And I said, it can't be that bad.
Right.
And it shouldn't be that bad.
Right.
And of course, there are plenty of great people everywhere.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
absolutely.
that. But you're confronted with this crap. So anyway, that was the weeding out process of band members, amongst many things. Drugs, alcohol, all this other kind of stuff. We didn't have it. So that's the trust issue. The excellence and the discipline, man. If you go to the back of the book and you see how many dates we played, which I put in the back of the book because I always talk about it, and I said, you know what, I'm going to put it on paper the best I could piece together because I kept records of it. And there were like 2,500 nights, and most of the nights were 3, 4, 5 sets a night. Wow. So we're like at 9,000 shows or something. That when you look at it, your eyes peel. And I said, that's dedication, you know. So the thing is, the excellence that we attained were attained through the discipline of playing those shows.
Yeah.
Night after night after night after night after night. And I talk about the boredom of excellence because it sucks to learn how to be great. But imagine any gold medalist in the Olympics, what makes them a gold medalist? They're up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
That's working hard.
You're not up at 4 a.m. I'm not, but they are.
Yeah.
That's why they got the gold medal.
That's
you look at the first chair in the Philharmonic. Why is that person first chair? Because that person's up at 4 o'clock in the morning playing 9 hours a day. Right.
Yeah.
There's no way getting around that you have to do something thousands and thousands and thousands of times to get good at something.
Yeah.
And we did. And that made us bulletproof, because when you do something thousands of times, you are confronted with every possible thing that could go wrong.
Yep.
And you can react to it.
That's right. That's right.
And when you're playing in front of 100,000 people, when a promoter hires a band and you're a headliner and you're playing a festival and you see there's 30 bands on the bill, on the top is always us or AC/DC or Judas Priest or Iron Maiden or Guns N' Roses. One has to know that the promoter is trusting you with 100,000 people. And if you suck in front of 100,000 people, you just don't only do damage to you do damage to the event, because then it goes, I went to see them and they suck. All right. And then people go, don't go back next year.
That's correct.
You can't do that.
That's right.
So the only way you get great is to practice getting great
over and over and
over
again.
and over. And
they talk about repetition, right?
Repetition.
Over and over again.
Boredom of excellence, man.
Yeah.
You know, you do it. You know, there was nights I used to come home and I go, man, how many more nights? How many more days? How many more sets? But you know what's that cliche that they say that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results? I don't agree with that. I think that that's not true. I think that repetition, you get better, but you don't even know you're getting better. If you follow me, it's so incrementally tiny.
Yes.
You may say to yourself, for example, on any given night, I hit a wrong chord in that particular song, and you'll go, I'm not going to do that tomorrow. So that's the lesson you learn.
That's right.
That night.
That's right.
Okay. Or the lighting rig didn't hit a spotlight at a certain point in a certain song. You tell the light guy to make sure it doesn't happen the next night.
Yes.
And if you're not smart enough to learn, even incrementally, then you're in the wrong business. But you know what? You wouldn't be doing it if you this long if you weren't going to take lessons.
That's right. Well, you've wasted a lesson if you've missed the opportunity, right?
One I couldn't have said it better. You've wasted a lesson. That's right. Every mistake should be a lesson. In what not to do next time. Like I say to people, I don't repeat the same mistakes. I make new ones all the time. I find new ways to up, but I won't do the old one. So so what the book really does is it kind of takes you into my mind of how and I always say, like, the guys in the band, if they wasn't for them, I wouldn't be talking to you. If Dee didn't write these songs, you and I wouldn't be talking.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that speaks to collaboration, which is something that you value heavily, right? I mean, obviously, if you're in a band, you have to know how to collaborate, but to recognize the strengths in the individuals, what they can do. You know, there's not one person that does it all, right? And so you need everyone to come together to make it work.
Yeah, and so I recognize that. You know, Ahmet Ertegun, the chairman of Atlantic Records, said something to me one night. We're having dinner, and I say this in the book. You know, I said, how do you go from Coltrane? His love was jazz, so he started out signing jazz artists, Ornette Coleman, Coltrane, Milt Jackson, all this. I'm not a jazz person, but his love of jazz got him and his brother to start Atlantic Records. And you know, time goes on, and then he signs Benny King, and the Drifters has big hits, and then and he goes on to the Coasters, and he goes on, and then it's eventually it's Crosby, Stills and Nash and Led Zeppelin and AC/DC and of course, and today, right? It's a legacy. And I said, how do you hear that? And he goes, I don't hear that. He goes, if I had a record label built on what I loved, I'd be broke. It's exactly what he said to me. He said, I had to bring people in who heard things I didn't hear.
Right.
I had to trust them that they heard things I didn't hear. And then he said this thing, and he said, success is so much easier if you don't mind who gets the credit. And I went, wow, that is sublimating your ego for a greater cause.
Yeah.
So I've sublimated my ego a lot over the years.
Yeah,
for a
it's
greater
amazing.
cause.
That's amazing. The piece, JJ, that I absolutely love is you talked about your transformation into a businessman and understanding the business side of things is not just, you know, rock and roller, and I thought that was a true significant to what, because as you sort of detailed and explained that transformation and how significant that was, and it's something you needed to do, right?
Yeah, and it's something that happened and I didn't even know it was happening,
Mm.
which is part of what I say in the book. You know, these transitions occur. I didn't wake up one. Well, I did wake up after failed management on a number of occasions. I said, I can't get any worse than these guys. But I was scared because I had to talk to guys that, you know, like bar owners and, you know, for better or worse, you know, you all the myths you hear about, you know, kind of people they are.
Yeah.
And agents I didn't know. And I had to discern who was bull and who wasn't. And in the beginning, you always get lied to. And,
Yep.
you know, your only guarantee is that you become so successful that they have to tell you the truth because they need you more than you need them. And that's really the key in life. You know, if you are needed more than somebody needs you, then you have the upper hand and you can pretty much, you know, you can run the table. And so we had to become very powerful. But I had instinctually, I knew what I had to do, but I also had an agent named Kevin Brenner, who was my mentor in the clubs, who was very powerful, could make or break a band. And when he decided that we were a band that was worth his time, that became an interesting thing because then I decided to learn as much as I could. I learned as much as I could from him because I want to know what the secrets were about this world I was in. Once we figured out the world we were in and we became the biggest band in the world, the next jump to the big time, that brought in bigger challenge.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
And bigger people.
Right.
And bigger because the money is bigger.
Yes.
And the egos are bigger.
Yes.
And the mountaintop is higher and the valley is deep.
Yes.
Is deeper.
Yes.
And I talk about being an entrepreneur and about why entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs. And the book begins with a discussion between me and my brother. My brother saying he doesn't understand how I run my life. I don't understand, you know. And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, well, you know, I was a school teacher. I had a pretty even existence. And then I retired and became a teacher again and retired. And he says, well, you know, you started a drug dealer and you go here and then the band goes, blah, and then you climb to the top and the band goes broke. And then you come back with this. And then the second wife leaves you. And he's telling me this and I'm listening and I'm going, Jesus Christ. I'm going, man, that's a lie. I remember thinking, I went, wow. And he goes, how did you do it? And I went, you know, man, I was born with asbestos underwear. Mm. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I could take the heat and I'm willing to take the risks for bigness and risk the big fall. And that's what entrepreneurs do.
Right.
They take big risks. And I said to my brother, just because you're not doesn't mean you're any better or worse than me. We're just two different people.
That's right.
You know, the world needs plumbers. The world needs electricians. The world needs teachers. God knows those jobs may be way more important than anything else we do.
That's right.
I mean, who the hell cares about a baseball star? You know, your house doesn't have power. You need a goddamn electrician who knows what the hell he's doing. Let's be real here. That's a scary thing, especially in this economy these days, because service is such an important ability. Nurses, doctors, those are the kind of people who interact. We live in this fake stardom that people imbue with so much power when in fact the teachers are the most powerful.
Right.
And my brother was a great teacher. And you know, I run into people all the time because I live in New York City. Mm-hmm. And they go, Mr. Segal was your teacher. He was a great teacher. And I went, what a legacy to have.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what's my legacy? I used to say to my brother, my job is to undo in 2 hours everything you've done in 8 during the day.
Well, you know something, everyone always remembers that great teacher, right? You ask anyone their favorite teacher, everyone always has one. They can all and they can remember why, what they did, and a difference that they made. So you're absolutely right. You know, there is a place for everyone.
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah, there is a place for everybody, and teachers are so important. And my brother was a great teacher, and we're very, very different. Yeah. We're really different people in that respect. And I've always taken I've always taken a chance. And in writing this book, you take a chance too, because you put your book out there.
Absolutely.
Go,
Yeah.
Good, bad, hit, not a hit. I mean, but I had felt the story had to be told. The fact that you read it and you gleaned from it is so important.
It is. No, and so again, I commend you, JJ, for writing the book and laying the lessons out that you did. One last thing I want to sort of ask you about, when you sort of look at your story, and you know, I would imagine when you talk to some of your peers in the industry, right, and you exchange stories, there's some commonalities, but it also feels like going through your story, there's some uniquenesses as well. When you sort of do that comparison to some of your peers, do you see those uniquenesses about your story and others, or just, I'm just curious about that.
I think this Twisted story is one of the most unique stories in the music business. I don't see too much equation with other bands, and I don't look. Everyone's life is like a snowflake. You know, you peel it back, and it's unique, and it's. But I've always said too, everybody in the world has a story, but most people just shouldn't tell it because, you know, it's not that interesting. And that's very narcissistic and self-absorbed of me. But I know that our story is totally different. I know that there's no story like that. I know it because I've read stories of these other bands, and when you watch these shows about how bands rise and fall apart, and drugs, alcohol, ours was a whole different story. I mean, we had our issues, but it wasn't because of that. We had a different pathway. You know, we became great. We fell apart. We came back again. We had 4 lives. People don't understand. We had the lives in the bars that lasted 10 years. We had the lives of video stars and record labels. That was 5 years. Then we had 12 years of breakup, in which all of us had to go figure out a way to survive. You know, and I was broke. Dee was broke. We were sued. We had to file bankruptcy. It's in the book. You know. I talked about how we confronted it, you know, and I knew what was coming, which is another thing too, talk about wisdom. You know, there's 2 different kinds of chaos in your life. There's proactive and reactive, and being proactive is better than being reactive. Reactive is like, I don't know what's going on. It's all happening to me and I can't respond. Proactive means you kind of know it's about to come around the corner, and you kind of put the flak jacket on, you know, you put the seatbelt on yourself before you save your kid. And I talk about the difference. It's like football. Football has defense and offense. The offense always knows 2 seconds before the defense. So they always have the edge. It's the same thing in life too. It's understanding crises, challenges, catastrophes. And that's why I do business motivational speaking, because I explain this to people and they go, oh, yeah, you're right. I never thought about that. But the ability to anticipate bad things happening or anything happening. So anyway, that's just like a general, when I talk to other bands, they may go through some kind of similarity, but they can't articulate it this way.
Got you.
This was a clear articulation in business terms about success for a band, which does not normally go with a band. So I'm laying it out to you that this is how it happened. And it's not about the music per se. He wrote the music, was wonderful. And that's also, without the music, there's nothing. But without this underneath it, you would have never heard music. So that's really what makes the story unique. And I know it's unique enough because people tell me.
And again, that's that twisted method that shined through and everything. And again, great job on the book. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that I remember the very first time when I saw, you know, We're Not Gonna Take It video, and you know, watching that father kind of get foamed at the mouth because he was angry with his son. What are you gonna do? And he's like, I'm gonna rock. You know, those are sort of the memories that you sort of reflect on. You go, man, that was a great time. And so I just want to say thank you, certainly for you know, the time today here for certain, but writing the stories, your book, and sharing the manner in which you have. And JJ, man, thank you and congratulations on a job well done.
Thank you. So the book is Twisted Business. It's out now on Rosetta. It's available on Rosetta Books. It's available on Amazon. I also have a a podcast. Doesn't every human being have a podcast at this point?
The French Connection.
It's the JJ French Connection. Beyond the music, in which I have authors, writers. You know, I kind of expand beyond what you think I know a guy should have. I have plenty of musicians, but I cover all my interests on that too. So when people say to me, you know, like, here's the one thing about the business that we're in, which is the entertainment business. I say that nobody knows reinvention more than people in the entertainment business, because we're confronted with having to reinvent ourselves every day because the public is demanding something. And nothing is more indicative of that than you're sitting down with someone who's doing an interview and you have a hit record and they go, well, we're at JJ French. Stay Hungry is doing great. It's number one on the chart. So what's next? What's next? I just freaking enjoy the next 5 minutes. Can I just give me a break, man? Like, can I smell the fucking roses? Just like, I will deal with the next, So right now I'm smelling the roses.
There you go.
I'm enjoying this right now, and being on this show is one of them. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you, and you deserve to enjoy your time. And to our listeners, where can we send them if they want to learn more about you and your book? Or
well, first of all, you want to send me an email to me directly.
Okay.
I answer emails, which is askjj@jayjyts. I twisted askjjts at Gmail, and I will answer you.
Amazing.
But there's twistedsisters.com, there's jjfrench.com. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on everything. I'm on Cameo if you want a personal note from me, happy birthday wishes, whatever. We're doing all of that. So we cover the same social media areas everybody else does. People want to get a hold of it, it's easy enough. But yeah, jj.com, twistedsisters.com, at JJ French on Twitter, at JJ French. It's always JayJayFrench. And when you go on to Spotify or Apple or Podcast One for my podcast, it's the JJ French Connection. It's JayJayFrench. And the book on Amazon is easily purchased. Just go to Amazon, put JJ French, JayJay. It'll take you right to the book, and
amazing. You
can get your copy, and you'll know all the secrets.
There we go. Well, JJ, I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for being on the Audacious Living podcast, and all the best, my friend.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
Back we are here on the podcast, and I can't say enough about JJ being here, and I really want to thank you again for the time as well as the insights. It was awesome, and I really appreciated the lessons, and wanted to say thank you once again for being here on the Audacious Living podcast for such a good chat. JJ left us with so much to think about, but if there's just one thing that I take from my conversation with him, it would be this. The task of reinventing yourself isn't easy, but reinvention, or learning skills or adapting to new situations, is key to both our personal and professional success. Reinventing ourselves is a means to rediscover fulfillment, purpose, meaning, and a whole new direction. And all we've got to do is step up and take that challenge. And when we do, we will head off in a whole new world. And an expression that we heard a lot of in the last 18 months is pivot. So the question is, whether you're reinventing or pivoting yourself, are you ready to take the leap? Hey, listen, if you haven't registered for email notifications of the podcast, please know that you can do so simply by heading over to bestaudaciouslife.com. All you've got to do is enter in your email address, and you'll be immediately alerted every time there is new content that comes out. We've come to the end of another edition of the Audacious Living podcast, and sending my thanks as always to our amazing listeners and all you lovers of audaciousness. It's your support and this ongoing support in such a tremendous way is what keeps the things going, and I really, really appreciate all the support, whether it's the likes, the DMs, the personal messages, the 5-star ratings, the comments. It's all super appreciated, and I say thank you. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, and show love to one another.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.